back, loyal watchers, to the second episode of the School Shrinks. I'm Chris. With me, as always, is Joel and Brook. How you guys doing? What's going on with you guys?
Hey, Chris. Good to see you tonight.
What's going on, Joel?
Y'all? What's going on?
Do you guys work during the summer?
I do. Yeah. I'm a little, I do kind of, it's a little flexible, but yeah, I'm on the clock.
Yeah. So am I. Are you, Joel?
I do not work during the summer. Actually, my last day was June 6th, so I have off until August.
But you're working on dissertation stuff, though.
I'm working on dissertation stuff. Just met with my dissertation chair today, and so we were going over some things. So doing a little bit of that, but not doing any assessing or any counseling or anything like that.
Yeah, so you're doing a whole 180 on your dissertation, right? You're starting over now?
I'm starting over completely. I'm scrapping the whole thing. I'm starting over from scratch.
Yeah. Well,
four more years of dissertation.
There you go. That's what I like to hear. So I work full year, and I think Brook and we work a little bit different full years because I'm actually assessing kids over the summer. We're creating programs. We're developing new systems for the upcoming school year and things like that. But Brook, yours is a little bit different, right?
Yeah, I do a lot more administrative kind of things in the summer and networky kind of things, and then preparing for the next school year. So kind of getting everybody ready for what needs to happen next school year. What do you end up so you're testing kids in the summer? Are you, and then like you're racing chairs up and down the hall,
basically,
things like that?
Yeah, so one of my campuses has little ramps because we don't have stairs. So yeah, we just start at the end, just come flying down the hall after the custodians have gotten done waxing the floor. So it works great. No. So the way we kind of do it in my district, there's about 8 of us that work full year round. So any cases that were left over, we knock them out during the summer. It's super beneficial. So I think it helps a lot. I mean, we kind of prioritize our personal cases, but like, let's say Joel was in our district. He had a couple he wasn't able to get to, and he either got consent or didn't. We would just knock them out if the parents are able to bring them up during the summer. It's almost like an appointment-only type of thing, so like a doctor's office. And we're all centralized on a campus, so that helps too. So it's just like a rotating door of students coming in and out. And it works really well. We've been doing it for, I think, about 4 years now. But there's 24 school psychs in my district, so not everybody does the full year round.
So how much of a break do you actually get, Chris, for, vacation and stuff?
So there is like an added bonus, right? So because I'm a full year employee, we have extra vacation days that we have. And I have more days that I get, those state and local days. We get the whole week of 4th of July off every single year. But those vacation days are days that the other school psychs don't get. Right. So I think I get 10 vacation days a year. So when you do the math, I think we only work about 2 weeks more than other school psychs because we have to take those vacation days. They don't roll over. Right. So you use them or you lose them type of thing. So everybody ends up using them over the summer. There's one of the guys in our district. He's the week of 4th of July. He's taking the week before and the week after off. So he gets a 3-week break. But everybody comes back basically the week he comes back. So he's really only working, like I said, 2 weeks more than everybody else. So, I mean,
that's not a bad deal.
We pay more too.
And then you also get every Friday off too, right?
Yeah, so we get every Friday off as well. So we always have a 3-day weekend. So it's not that big of to get the extra stuff done, to help alleviate some of your pressure into the school year. The 8 of us, we bond really well over the summer since we're all together and we don't see each other during the school year. Because we're not centralized. We don't stay at district during the school year or anything like that. So it's a nice little bonding time. So we're all really good friends, and we just kind of hang out for 2 months, basically.
And you don't have to stay home taking care of your kid.
No, but I would love to if I had to, right? Because
okay, all right.
Absolutely would. Do you guys got any big summer plans?
Joel's going on an international trip, right?
Yeah, it's been a while since I've traveled. Since we're talking about COVID, I haven't traveled until like right up before COVID happened. So it was like December 2019. So yeah, I'm going to Turkey this year. Just letting loose and, going to do a few things with a friend of mine. And so I'm looking forward to that.
But that's not Turkey, Texas.
Not Turkey, Texas. I thought about that. That was an option.
Of Turkey, Texas?
Yeah, I thought about Turkey, Texas, Paris, Texas. But, I'm going to go, we're going to go abroad. Got a few more things to do.
That's really cool.
Okay. All right.
Brooke, are you taking any trips?
No, not really. So just staying around and melting in the heat.
That's why we do it in Texas, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
What about you, Chris?
Oh, so I'm going back to the motherland. I'm going to Hawaii in July. Super excited about that. We have a nice family trip that we're going to go take on. So I think there's going to be about 40 of us that go there. Wow. So it's been, I think, about 6 years since I've been. 7 years, right before I graduated grad school. My wife and I went. So it'll be nice to go back and hang out. And
so your son's never been?
No, not at all. So we're hoping to give him a nice, beautiful tan, right, and make him look a little bit.
All right.
So,
and you've got a vacation, a beach house there, right?
No, I wish I did. That would be nice. No, we're doing the old hotel route.
Okay.
We're school psychologists. We don't make that much money, guys.
I thought you had a huge condo timeshare thing going on there.
No, we do own an island though, but that's regardless. So
there's what did I hear? There's like 60 school psychologists in the whole state of Hawaii.
Yeah, there's not a lot. A couple years ago in NASP, when I was in San Antonio, I met a couple, a husband and wife, who are both school psychologists, and they're like, this is basically what we say, what the issues are in Texas, but significantly less. Just. There's one for like an entire district. They don't make very much money. The couple I talked to actually lived with family. So like they didn't even own their own house. But that's a Hawaii thing. Hawaii's expensive. It's you gotta work it if you want to live there, or already have worked it and then came to Hawaii. So
Chris, are you planning on making a move to Hawaii, or is that what you're telling us to be a school psych?
Not at all. Not at all. Not that I wouldn't love to. No, if I did anything, I would go to like where I was born, like San Diego, and then like stop there, and then just like not go across the Pacific. All right, as close as you can get to Hawaii without necessarily being Hawaii. So,
hey.
Oh man! But so for all of our guys that are watching, we want to start introducing some fun little bits into our thing, some little like sections and like moments that we want to do. So Brooke is going to pilot one for today, and we call it the Word of the Day.
Word of the day, brought to you by Alphabet SpaghettiOs.
Jesus.
You too can have a summer snack. Just open that can with a can opener.
I hope that went as well as you thought.
That's actually my meal going to Turkey. That's what I'm going to be eating.
All
right, Brooke, what do you got?
Behoove.
Okay, what about it?
Behoove. Say it with me. Ready?
Behoove.
1, 2, 3. Behoove. Behoove. Behoove is way underutilized. That's my hot take, and I'm sticking to it.
Okay, so can you define it for us?
What made you think about that?
I just was, woke up one morning and said, it behooves me. We don't use that word enough.
Okay. Let me tie it back real quick.
That's what it was.
So the definition is duty or responsibility for someone to do something. And don't you think as school psychologists, it behooves us to be advocates for our children, for our students in the schools?
Even educators, school staff, parents.
So education in general.
Just people, we care for kids.
We should get guiding
so
points,
it should behoove us. Behooving, yes.
Do you have an example of when you had to behoove?
No, not right now.
Okay.
Because again, it's an underutilized word. And so it takes some time to think about how we can utilize the word in context.
Well, I'm not necessarily teaming that. I'm just talking about the definition of it. So can you think of a moment when you felt like it was your responsibility to do something, right? It is incumbent on you, on Brook Roberts or Joel, not Joel Bell, to do something.
Let me think. Recently, recently I was in a classroom observing some students, and it was my obligation. It behooved me to make sure that when I left that campus that day, that I made a note, a verbal note to the principal to let them know how that teacher was doing in the class, because she was phenomenal. It was my obligation to do that.
And I think there's too many times that a teacher may go unnoticed because they're doing their job correctly, and there's not somebody in there all day. But you were in there, and you're able to see that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And I had to make a note of it.
So, Brooke, I have a challenge for you. Now you have to use behoove in one of your psychological reports. That's the next thing that we have to do to incorporate behoove into the.
It would behoove the art committee too.
Yeah, exactly.
Joel, what section of a psychological report would the word behoove best fit in?
Recommendations.
I was thinking about the recommendations. That's right.
Yep.
It would behoove
I think you're right.
such and such to engage in some group counseling.
But I mean, if you think about,
we can expand the vocabulary of Julio to include words like behoove.
There we go.
So like when you guys write reports, and this is how I write reports, I write it almost like a flow of a story, right? We're introducing, in the beginning of a report is the introduction, the background information. I'm setting the scene, basically going forward, of Jonathan, the sentient microphone, right? And so throughout the body of my report, all I'm doing is showing and presenting data that's been attained over time. And at the end, the summary, I'm drawing a conclusion, and I'm making those recommendations, or let me rephrase that. I'm behooving others to understand how the report has been, and then based off of that, help the child if needed.
Well, you're the behoover.
I'm the behoover. You can just call me a hoover or a behove. And that's the word of the day.
And that's the word of the day, brought to you by Alphabet SpaghettiOs.
There you go. All right, guys. So our main topic today, the thing we want to talk about a lot is, COVID-19 and how it affected education and kind of how we three navigated it or had trouble navigating and had help with other people. Because once that hit, we were all in schools. I happened to be on spring break when they shut down schools, right? So first of all, we were spring break, and then we got the whole message that, all right, you're going to take another week off and we'll see where it's at. And then at the end of that next week, they're like, whole rest of the year is going to be virtual, which was chaos. I don't know if it was chaos for you guys. I am sure it was. But having to try to figure out how to have ARDs, how to educate students, how to do all that stuff was immensely difficult, right? And then to come back the following school year, and at least in my district, it was half in person. You could do in person or virtual. And our students had a lot of trouble with that. And our teachers had a lot of trouble with that, trying to educate children when we had probably in the beginning of the school year, 6 or 7 in the room and like 18 virtual, and trying to keep them all attending and trying to help them accelerate and progress through the curriculum was difficult. And then for us to have to test and to make legit recommendations and stuff like that. But I almost want to talk, we'll get to that in a second. So how was it like during your guys's? Like, kind of talk me through kind of what happened with you guys. We'll do Joel first.
So it was similar. I was actually going through my practicum at that time. It was my second or third semester of practicum. And like many people, I was thinking, hey, this is just going to be like one of those pass by night, things that we hear about. It's here one day, gone the next. But then we did go off on spring break, and then we never returned that school year. So, I was just now starting to like get my feet wet. I was like, oh, really? I'm going to, present at an art meeting. And then we never came back. So,
and you were prepping for that art meeting, weren't you?
I was like looking forward to it. I was like, yeah, I'm going to go into internship next year and I'm going to be a pro at this. And then I never presented at an art. And so going into internship year in the fall, it was interesting, but I had a lot of help. So it was crazy because I didn't think that it was going to be that serious, and then everything shut down in Lubbock. And so it was, it was interesting.
Real quick, Brooke, before you jump in here, Joel, when you were going into internship, were you placed, or did you have to do interviews and all that type of stuff?
And that's actually another thing, because I interviewed, I want to say late February, and they actually told me that, well, we're going to let you know probably right before you guys go on spring break. Needless to say, I didn't hear anything back until probably about late May, early June that I got the internship. So I was calling and harassing people by email, like, what's going on? Am I getting this internship or not? Because I need to start trying to look other places. But, fortunately, I did get the internship. But yeah, we didn't hear anything. It just was ghost for us a moment on that internship. So yeah, it was like, I believe it was late February that I interviewed.
Interesting. Okay. Sorry, I was just out of curiosity. Sorry, Brooke, go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off. I apologize.
Yeah, no. I guess my experience was pretty similar to both of yours. I think the difficult thing for me, especially the spring of 2020, was I just didn't know when I was going back. And so it was kind of like I couldn't really start any new projects because I didn't necessarily know how that was going to, it was just this time of paralysis almost, just not knowing which direction to move. I guess once the 2020 school year came back, things were a little bit better. In the part of the country that Joel and I live in, most people were in denial that we even had a thing called COVID. And so once that school year started back, things were pretty much back to normal.
Yeah.
And that was, that was. Yeah. So our schools and our communities were pretty much back to square, to the routine.
That's crazy. Well, so Brooke, through the program, were you guys worried about your students? I mean, the expectation. So Joel, you happen to be that one. So the expectation coming out of practicum is that you are ready to do a full caseload as an intern, right? Or at least get to that point. Correct me if I'm wrong, Brooke, right? I may have had a different internship experience, but still, like, you're like, oh, we are about to put in all these practicum students who basically had 8 months out of the school year. And now we're like, all right, now you're going to go into an internship and it's going to be chaos because it's pandemic, it's quarantine, there's virtual learning. Who knows what a referral is anymore? God forbid, we're not even talking about this school year. We're going to get to that in a second about what everything looked like then. Like, what were the round table discussions on that? What was the red table discussion on that?
The interesting thing was, yes, we were concerned about that from the university side of things, but there were other things that we were navigating. But there were in academia and higher education, you tend to have people who tend to lean a little bit more progressive and maybe care more about their health and the health of others. So they may not necessarily have understood, and they were the decision makers, right? But yet they may not have understood that we had graduate students in the field who were going to have to report back to school. And so there was a lot of tension between those kind of institutions who had their own, had driven their own stakes into the ground.
I can only imagine.
So it was difficult to navigate.
Yeah. And were classes for university classes, those were all virtual too, or no?
It was given to the professor to decide.
Fair enough. Okay.
So for the sake of health and or convenience, most faculty said, let's just do online.
Fair enough. Well, I mean, our job is so hands-on with things, and I get people who are trained to be something or another that have never seen things before, right? Never seen a test kit before. And they're like, oh, I'm supposed to be testing within the next 2 weeks. And I'm like, how have you never been exposed? Or our program doesn't have them, or we don't use them, or the expectations on the site to give us those types of things. And so I can only imagine what it'd be like, because I was exposed to everything through my program, right? We had a huge crash course and about 15 different cognitive assessments and 10 academic assessments. So I can only imagine what it was like. Thank God I already graduated before I went in there. But Brooke, you had founded, sorry, you go ahead.
Yeah. So, well, let me ask you a question. What are some of the things that either parents and or school staff, teachers talk to you guys about during the shutdowns and the pandemic? What were they expressing as some of their concerns? That
we hope our children don't regress, and that at the best we're hoping for plateau, for maintaining, right? And
regression or maintenance in what areas?
Skills, whatever they're working on, right? Academic, behavior skills. Behavior was a big thing too. And I think we can kind of dive into that here in a second. But, a lot of parents, when we have ARDs or annuals, and if I happen to attend them, if they were like a read or something like that, the parents are like, I just hope we don't regress, because my child is virtual. It's very difficult for my child is nothing. And I remember a parent saying this, it's not on the teacher. My child just has a hard time attending to school all day, 8 hours on a day on a computer, right? And they're going to do the best they can, but I know you are trying the best you can as the campus and as the educator to keep them attending, but he's just not, or she's just not, right? And so what are we going to do in the long run? And the answer was, we don't know, because this was we were figuring it out in the moment. There's no blueprint for this, right? We didn't have a manual for a pandemic education.
No, and a lot of what the professionals relied on were other similar or simulated shutdowns, like during what was it, CARS? What was that?
Swine flu, H1N1.
Yeah. And so there was really nothing that was of this magnitude that even the health professionals could really look to say, this is how to navigate that. Right. So you had a lot of people talking about did you feel like, and Joel, maybe this is for you, do you feel like that the concerns that parents expressed for their children were similar to the concerns that were expressed by the educators?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the things that I've heard, specifically from educators, they were thinking, does this student have something like an intellectual disability, or is this just a lack of learning that took place during the past couple of years, especially this year? People were like, and they were calling, a lot of educators were saying, is this a COVID kid? Meaning that, did they just not learn over the course of, the pandemic hitting to this point? Is that why we're seeing so much of a, we're not seeing as many skills academically? Yeah. Are we seeing this big deficit because they didn't learn, they didn't really partake in even the virtual learning over the past couple of years? Or is this actually something that's an intellectual issue?
Yeah. No, and that was something I was going to kind of bring up, and I was kind of jumping a little bit ahead, is referrals after that school year were rough, right? Because is that a question that we need to ask ourselves? The student's behind because of COVID, but then is that fair? Because, what are we going to do? Are they ever going to catch up? So we have to blame a pandemic for a child who's in third grade and is behind in both reading and math, and they may not ever catch up, but we'll be sorry, it's a COVID issue, not a SPED issue. Where do we draw the line? Do we just test everybody? Because that's not reasonable either. Or is it? I don't know.
It was, the behavior, they saw the behaviors, the challenging behaviors increase. And so then it was like, in terms of referrals, we were getting a lot of the ED ones, like, well, this kid must be ED. But then the interesting thing is we sit in the staffings or the SSTs, and then we go over everything that child has gone through, and then, but we still want the ED psychological. I'm like, did we not just discuss all of these things that happened over the course of these 2 years for this student? And we're still wanting to disregard all that and then move on with an ED psychological evaluation. So that was really interesting to me, how it was difficult for some people to separate all of the environmental things versus, okay, are we dealing with a mental health issue?
Yep. And so I'm going to backtrack a little bit real quick too, because Brooke, I have another answer to your question about what people were asking. Or not even quite, but conversations I was having with parents. And I remember it was this school year, and it was like in January, and the child was having a lot of behavior concerns. It was a 4-year-old, right? And the parent and I were just talking. It was part of like the pre-referral process. They wanted to talk to the school psych. I gave them a call. And they're like, and I wonder, is it because the child hasn't been exposed to people like for the past 2 or ever, right? If you're born, and I have a child that would fall in that age category, but thankfully he went to daycare and things like that. But if we had our child in 2019 and then the next year everything shut down, but he stayed at home. And then the next 2 years, basically, he stayed at home. He didn't go out because of the pandemic and COVID and stuff. And then he starts school. Of course, like he's never been exposed to. If they has no siblings, I mean, does he know?
Let's quantify. So let's quantify that. If we had a 7-year-old kid in front of us today, and we took those 2 years where school and predictability and routine and structure was disrupted. Mm-hmm. That is the equivalent to almost 30% of their life.
Yeah. And let's say 7 in like August or whatever, right? 7 in August of this year.
Yeah.
So 6 years and 5 years, which are formative years for building behavior foundations, is taken away.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's
absolutely
the group social skills, kinder and pre-K. It's all hand holding. It's all socialization. Mm-hmm. It's working on those types of coping skills. So once we hit academics in first grade, we started, letting the children lead more instead of the parent or the adults. But if they don't have that, or if they did it through a camera, I mean, what do you expect them,
well,
right?
and those teachers who were using cameras, they're still unidirectional cameras. I mean, those cameras are not moving and following the speaker in a classroom. I mean, I've walked into so many classrooms where the teacher was using a Chromebook, and it was just set on a podium on the front of and half the time the teacher wasn't standing in front of the Chromebook. So anyways, I came across
right? I mean, if we could play devil's, what they didn't know, they couldn't figure out how to do all this stuff.
Oh no. In fact, so I came across this article, and then I just kind of wanted to share some stuff with you. And it was a group of researchers in the Dallas area. They surveyed 15 different schools, and they surveyed the parents and the teachers. And then they had a group called parent teachers. So people who were both educators, but also had their own children enrolled in school. And so they broke them up into 3 groups and asked them this set of 16 questions, and the questions were broken down into the categories of child-related concerns, teacher-related concerns, and parent-related concerns. And it was really interesting that the magnitude of the concerns related to academic growth, developmental milestones, social development, mental health disorders, for the parents, they improved from time one. So they administered the survey in the summer of 2020, and then they administered it again in the fall of 2020. The concerns for the parents got a little bit better, right? The concerns
what do you mean by better?
I guess the concerns were not as severe at the second administration. Okay. But the concerns for the educators were actually worse than the concerns for the parent educator group and the parent group. How could we explain those differences? Why would at time two, would the ratings, the more concern, the more worry, the more fear for that group of parent/educators, why would that be more concerning than the group for the parents, for the responses for the parents and the responses for the teachers?
Do you think it's because they're in it?
I mean,
right? They're living it.
It could be. Yeah, it could be.
We, as education, we have to put on a good front. We're not going to, the sky is falling. So we have to show these parents that we're trying our hardest. But you saw educators across the nation showing what their classrooms looked like when the pandemic started, right? Or when quarantine, that school year started, and showing that they're stressed out. They don't know how they're going to educate. And a good educator stresses out about things like this because they love their children, even the children they just got. And they're worried about what may be their lack of education. Right? And they're trying their hardest, but they're also worried about getting sick, and criminally underpaid. So is it worth the pay that I'm getting, just to be here on a drive? I don't know. What do you think? Brooke, when you read it, what did you think? Or sorry, Joel, go ahead, jump in.
Oh, no, I was also going to say, I wonder too how much of state testing and all that stuff played into this type of thing, because I know that there were changes made, to what was required for state testing and things like that. But I think that the pressure, was still on some of the educators to, make sure that students are still performing to the best of their abilities. But, being that you're going through all of this stuff, a lot of kids just weren't, specifically at one of my schools this past year, they said only one kid from a particular grade had passed the math and reading or something. So I wonder if there was still that lingering pressure from testing, considering everything that, kids are going through.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I wondered if maybe a locus of control had anything to do with it, that maybe parents had, from being home with their own kids being home with their kids for 3 to 6 months, they had more confidence in maybe the education system's ability to sustain and maintain social and emotional growth, buffer against any kind of mental health problems. Whereas they recognize the isolation and the loneliness. They recognize that in isolation and loneliness, there were increased problems related to anxiety and related to depression. And so maybe they just had more of a external locus of control, feel like that their community school system could have more influence with their own kids. And conversely, maybe teachers felt like, wait, I just need to get these kids into my classroom so that I can help, and maybe there was more internal locus of control amongst teachers.
No, I think that's a great way to bring it up. And I think parents may have seen how difficult it is to teach a child, right, as well. There was all those things going around about this is what you have to do every single day, with my kid, and you have 19 other ones in there. And so maybe let me give it to somebody who knows what they're doing, right? And that was a lot of pressure on teachers. I think education, being a teacher, I've never been one before, but I work with them every single day. It is immense pressure to be a competent teacher, right? To take a group of children and to educate them so that they're ready for the next grade, and to not fail them, and to also not fail a group of parents whose expectations are the same, right? When I drop my kid off when he starts school this next year, my expectation is you're going to be able to get him through this year, and there's going to be a certain amount of progress that's made, obviously based on anything else that may be an issue with my child. But, at the end of the year, I have certain expectations, but you're the person that does that, not me. That's your job to do that. You're the expert, right? So, I mean, that might be playing a part too.
Yeah, definitely.
Since you, I mean, taking this out of like the secondary school, since you have a student who's in college, I mean, what were your personal concerns as a parent for her?
My personal concerns were not related to health. She did struggle with her, feeling lonely, and I mean, she's turning 21 this summer. So at that time was 18, 19 years old. And she was just, it was her freshman year. So she was very resentful and did not want to have to be living at home under my roof. So we got her back to her friends as fast as we could. Our concerns were not health related. To be honest, our concerns were more inconvenience and hardship related because of the rules that the university had in place that if she tested positive, she would have to go off campus, and we live 1,000 miles away. And so we didn't have the funds to put her up in a hotel room for 10 days or bring her home at the drop of a hat. So,
man, yeah, that's stressful.
That's a real concern I think that a lot of parents who probably had college students probably thought the same type of thing. I don't even know what the policy was for tech in terms of that, but I'm sure a lot of people had those concerns as financially. I mean, it could be kind of rough.
Yeah, that was the biggest concern for us. She ended up testing positive twice, even after being vaccinated, and they ended up putting her in seclusion in her dorm room or something. So,
well, and quarantine was taken incredibly seriously too during that school year. We had the week before spring break. I could not make this up. I can make this up, but I'm not making it up. But one of our specials or elective teachers got COVID. And so everybody that was exposed to that elective, which was basically the entire school, had a quarantine. So now what the inverse of that is, not everybody was exposed to that teacher. So one class basically in each grade didn't have to go to that specials that day. So in every single grade from like 2nd to 5th, there was one teacher and one class in there for like the last 3 days before Christmas break. Everybody else got to go home and get 3 extra days of winter break. And it was, as somebody who works over the summer, it was ghost town. Everybody who was there was like happy that they were there. And that was the other side of it. People were, it sounds bad, but I noticed there were kids that were mad that they didn't get to quarantine because it was extra time off and they got to go home. Right? Whether like they weren't exposed to it, but so they still had to come to school. So that became a norm thing of like, oh, I get to stay home now. I get to stay home a week. I was exposed to it, whether they got it or not. But that was like an actual thing, And so the kids had these expectations of like, and maybe this leads into our next part with like just behavior posts, but like of like, oh, coming to school intermittently and whatever happens, right? Did you feel that kind of atmosphere on campuses, or is it just me?
It was interesting because at the beginning of this school year, actually kids, they said they were doing this would you rather game at one of the transition camps for kids, for some of the students. And they said, would you rather learn virtually or be in person? And most of the kids at this particular transition camp said they would rather learn in person, which I was very, very surprised about.
I thought I was going to go the other way.
I was just like, yeah, I was 100% sure most kids would have said, "Oh, I want to be virtual." But I mean, all of it was a resounding in person. And then we did follow up with them. We were like, "Well, is that because you want to see your friends?" And of course, they wanted to see their friends and they wanted to be back with the buddies and things like that. So, but I was still surprised though, because by the end of the school year, most kids were just bursting out of the door. But it was
school year, guys.
I was shocked. Yeah.
What did you guys tell parents? How did you guys talk to parents about things like this school year, right? 21, 22, when parents are coming back and they're worried about things. And that was a lot of conversation I had with my sped parents. right? My parents that were already in the program, but to referrals and like others, just parents in general who wanted to talk, like there was a lot of concern about, is my child ever going to make up this progress? Is this behavior, like what are we doing for behavior? Because it was a huge behavior at the lower grades, kinder and down for me across the board were a lot of trouble. So I had to have a lot of conversations with parents and teachers and help, consult and like help educate them and create new interventions and develop strategies and maybe expectations, right? Develop new expectations for these students to help them kind of transition into school, because it'd been a while since a lot of these kids had seen anybody else, right? For these first couple months. But just trying to ease the parents' concerns and pressure and stuff. Did you guys have those types of conversations?
So, well, I didn't. So I guess I would be interested in hearing what are some things that you found to be effective to ease their concerns? Because, and going back to kind of this article that I was looking at, one of the things that they suggest is continuing to offer these check-ins for both educators and parents, just somebody to listen to them in brief intervals to give the opportunity to express their concerns.
A lot of times when I talk to these parents, it was very much talking through what's developmentally appropriate, what's age appropriate, what are the behaviors that we're seeing, and kind of framing that in the context of that child's life up until that point. So we'll say Joel, right? So Joel is a 4-year-old who's never been in school before, because we're not going to put him in pre-K 3 school virtually, right? That's not a thing. We're not going to do that. So it's the first time he's ever been in school. He's an only child or the oldest child. He's been with mom and dad basically for 66% of his life only, right? Because quarantine and all that type of stuff. And now he's in a classroom with 20 other students, right? So him not attending, him getting up and moving around, him not listening, whatever, like throwing tantrums, stuff like that. That's all developmentally appropriate for a 4-year-old. But now we have to look at it in the context of the environment that he's been growing up in. It's regardless if the parents are good parents or not. They could be great parents, but now we're having a huge transition. One day he's at home and hanging out with mom and dad and doing whatever he wants. Next day it's the first day of school and he's with 20 kids and has to listen to an adult that's not mom or dad, and also has to kind of navigate the social norms of school and society in general when he's maybe never been exposed to it, because the past 2 years have all been about how do we not catch this horrible infectious disease that's going around, and just those conversations with parents, they seem to like, it helped ease their mind a little bit of like, we need to give these children time to adjust and learn, right? We are all hands on deck for children, the teachers, and I'm making a generalized statement. I do understand that, but the teachers are equipped to deal with these types of things. And we have multiple people on staff. We have speech pathologists to help with communication, functional communication. How do we say no instead of slapping, hitting, or throwing or whatever? How do I say, I want to play with that instead of just taking it from somebody else? You have behaviorists, you have psychologists, you have educators, you have administrators, we have social workers and counselors on every single one of our campuses. And that team comes together to help create an environment where these children can be successful and develop these skills, and the parents are asking all these other, like, oh, is this normal? Is this whatever? But that's the crux of it all, is how do we reassure me that my child is going to be okay? Reassure me that the calls I've been getting about my child hitting another kid are going to stop, because we are going to develop and create better avenues for that. Not mistrust, but better avenues for those disagreements that are happening in the classroom, So that's kind of how I navigated it, at least.
Chris, did you have a lot of parents talk about how these behaviors manifested at home? Did a lot of them say that, well, my kids started doing this at home over the period of COVID, or were there more concerns about behaviors as it relates to school?
Most of them were about behaviors related to school, but there were a couple that were like, well, these started at home, but I was always
of COVID, or were they just
personal experience? When I would ask, I'd be like, all right, when did these happen? Like, oh, when they started school. So now we're getting the high anxiety with kids, right? We're getting the anxiousness being in the school, and we're picking up on other behaviors as well, right? It's not this is a Joel issue. It is a Joel, Brooke, Chris, and 13 other kids issue. So it's, it's the group hive mind of a pre-K classroom. And I'm speaking specifically to pre-K because that's typically where all these issues came from, or kinder. But that hive mind of, oh, I just saw Joel do that. I'm going to go do that now, right? Because I saw what the result was and I want that same thing, right? So it was developing and creating these overall types of skills and strategies. And we're going to be implementing some pretty cool stuff in this next school year on one of my campuses. We're going to have basically a check and check out intervention type of thing where teachers that needed to work on a very specific skill can go to the speech pathologist or myself and actually find a specific intervention. Or like the speech pathologist has a whole thing that's like how to do what questions or where or how questions, right? So the teacher can actually go and check those out and utilize that in the classroom as a quick tier 1 intervention, which is tier 1 being classroom, general education classroom type intervention. For those that may not know about that type of stuff. But so we're kind of going to start doing that next school year. And we hope that's going to help a lot because a lot of the behavior problems that we were seeing in the early was communication problems because I don't know how to do something. I don't know how to say something. I don't know how to communicate my thoughts and needs. So my resort is to become physical or violent or run away, right? Escape out of a situation for all of our behaviorists that are listening. So that's a good question, Joel. Thank you. Hey, Brooke, do you have multiple dogs? Because if you have one dog, it's walked past you like 4 times in the exact same direction.
Are you serious? No, Minnie. So usually my filter, I've got a filter on my screen, right? So you can't see her. No, this is Minnie. Minnie's a Westie, and we have one dog. So she's probably just going in and out.
Okay, fair enough.
I'm sorry for her. I'm sorry that she's disturbed you.
No, I thought I was having a 99 Matrix moment where it was deja vu, and I'm like, oh, deja vu. It's like, no, the agents are here.
It would behoove you to go check on Minnie.
Well,
boom, done. Glitch in the Matrix.
Awesome. So what's the takeaway?
I think the takeaway is that education, and this will be mine, and then we'll all kind of jump in there, is that education, we tried multiple things, but I think we have to basically take what were given to us post-pandemic and use that going forward, right? We have to kind of take what we learned and start developing and know this is we have to reframe the context of these children and understand a year and a half, but essentially 2 years was completely screwed up academically and behaviorally as far as education is concerned. And so understanding that we have to be able to take that going forward and create programs and create systems and develop interventions and develop good referral type things for at least special education side of things, but for education in general, have different types of expectations.
I think that speaking about what Chris was saying a little bit earlier, it's about that, collaboration and cooperation. There are individuals within inside of the school. There's the teachers, the speech paths, the LSSPs, the counselors who have dealt with, these certain hardships, not necessarily COVID, but parents can rely on these various professionals to have a specific knowledge of these behaviors and these things. And so I think that collaboration is key between home and school. And that also means for us as professionals, really communicating with the parents and not just on when there are challenging behaviors, but even when kids are doing great and improving upon things. So there just has to be that collaboration and cooperation to help get us all through things like COVID-19 and pandemics.
Brooke, what do you got?
I guess I'll come back around to how you were asking me, what it was like. And in those first 3 months or you were asking all of us, Chris, what it was like. And I think those first 3 months, I said I was kind of in a paralysis. And I think that's got to be the exact opposite of where we go from here. And I'm saying that to say to the parent or to the teacher or to whoever's watching and listening to this, that you can do it. Just keep moving. Just keep trying. You're going to hit you're going to hit walls, you're going to hit obstacles, but our kids need us to just keep moving and keep trying. When you find something that doesn't work, you just switch it up and you try something different, and sooner or later you're going to hit something that does work.
So this next school year, I've got a new mindset I'm going into it. And we all do as people who work in education, because come August, we are so gung-ho for doing things. And then November and October hit, and we're like, Jesus, how much more time for Christmas and whatever. So I'm tired of being reactive. I think this kind of goes with what you were saying, Brooke. I'm tired of being reactive. I really want to be proactive going forward. I'm not going to I don't want to wait till things happen, right? And then try to fix the problem at that point, right? So if we help develop things early and create systems and rules and regulations in place to help these children and to help students and to help parents so that they know what the expectations are, it alleviates some things on the back end. And I'm not just talking about special education. I'm talking about education in general, right? Like, we need to set these children up. We need to set up whoever up for success. But to do that, we have to lay a very good foundation, right? Lay a good foundation, create solid walls so that we can just develop and create bigger buildings and more rooms, right? That's how we get to that. I mean, that's in my mindset, at least how I'm going to try to frame this next school year. We'll see what happens in our October video. We'll see if I'm stressed out and I'm missing half my hair. That's what I'm going into it with. You know?
Right.
No.
Well,
anything else from you? Go, Joel. What do you got?
No, I was just going to say, I think that those are some great takeaways. And I hope that, teachers, educators, parents who are listening to this can take away some of those positives and stuff that we discussed, and leave it down in the comments, whatever you think and what your experiences were.
Yeah. Put in the comments how it went. If you're an educator, tell us kind of some of your experiences, things like that. If you're a parent and you have questions, throw it in the comments. You know, we will be here to answer those to the best of our ability. If not, we will find somebody who can, and we'll have them on as a guest for a quick mailbox question, right? Or a mailbag question. Any closing words, you guys?
I'm behooved.
Well, on that note, we love it that you guys come and watch us and listen to us and ramble on about nonsense and whatever. Please like us, subscribe, and remember that, as educators and people who are in education, they're trying their best to do whatever they can for your children. But know also that you have a team that's surrounding your kid that's there to help them, right? There are resources available. You can always reach out to us if you need to ask us about certain things. We are here for you guys. We are the school shrinks. And remember, next time you're walking around, just have that nice conversation with somebody. Be the reason someone smiles. You don't know how important that is to somebody. Just have that conversation one time. Later.